What's up guys, this is Danny Matranga with Mind Pump TV, and today we're going to be going over proper execution of the barbell hip thrust. The barbell hip thrust is a great exercise for developing the glutes. It allows you to overload them safely, unlike some other lower body movements like squats and deadlifts, which present some more inherent risk. It has a relatively easy setup and a lot of really simple, easy to follow cues. Setup for this movement is everything. If you don't do it correctly, you might feel it in your quads, a little bit possibly even in the hamstrings. But if you set up right from the get-go, you're going to feel it immediately in the glutes. The first thing you're going to need is a bench and a barbell. You want to rest your upper back across the bench like so, making sure that you have some stability. If you're too far forward, you might end up actually pushing the bench out from behind you. But if you set up right on it nice and secure, you'll be okay. A good cue is to make sure that the scapula or the shoulder blades right here are making contact with the bench. From there, we need to get the bar over the pelvis. This can be an issue for some people, especially if you have bony hips. So you can get a bar pad or even use a towel over this portion of the bar to make sure that you don't get too much abrasion on the hip bone. Once you get the bar into position and the back into position, the last thing is the feet and shins. So I like to have my feet about in line with my shoulders, but it's unique for each person. So you're gonna have to play around with this a little bit to make sure that you really feel your glutes. But the shins will stay vertical for everybody. If the shins start going forward and back, that's when you're gonna start to feel your quads and your hamstrings like I mentioned earlier, and that completely ruins the exercise. So once you get into position here, you need to support the barbell with your hands to make sure that obviously it doesn't go off to the side. Get vertical shins. Make sure that you tuck the chin. We don't want to be here, or we're going to put too much excessive stress on the spine. We want to posteriorly tilt the pelvis or tuck the tailbone, which maximally contracts the glutes. And keeping vertical shins, slowly move through that range of motion. I like to keep my eyes downward when I do this, keeping my chin tucked and posteriorly tilting the pelvis. Squeezing for 1 to 2 seconds at the top while you do the movement to make sure that the glutes get optimal time under tension. You don't want to go too quick or you'll lose a lot of that benefit. Range of motion for the hip thrust is critical, and it's going to depend on a few things. The height of your body, the length of your femurs and shins, the height of the bench you're using. If you're using a bench at all, this can be done from the floor. The size barbell you're using, the size plates, right? The big thing here is you gotta play with it. You gotta kind of make it your own. The principles are all the same, right? We want vertical shins, we wanna squeeze our glutes, we wanna make sure we keep our chin tucked and our pelvis tucked so we can protect our spine. But you're gonna have to play around with setup because nobody's the same. The principles apply the same, but everybody's setup's gonna be unique. Common mistakes I see a lot of people make range quite a bit. One of the big ones is maybe they're feeling it too much in their quad, right? If you're feeling the exercise too much in the quad and not the glute, you need to look at the angle of your shin. Your shin should be straight up and down the entire movement. If it starts to get too forward or backward, you're gonna start to feel things like the quad or the hamstring. You're gonna take it away from the glutes. Another issue is foot placement. Again, you're gonna have to play with that depending on how tall you are, even what type of footwear you're wearing on that given day. If you're wearing a padded shoe versus like a Converse, you might need to adjust your foot placement so that you can drive through your feet more optimally to target your glute and get the pelvic bone into posterior pelvic tilt and max out the glute contraction. A big one I see with a lot of my clients too is pain from where the bar is resting, right? Because it's gonna rest in a pretty awkward position for both guys and girls. It's not super comfortable to have a ton of weight on a barbell laying right across your lap. So a couple things you can do. You can use a towel. You can actually purchase a pad specifically for hip thrusting, and that can mitigate some of that pain as you get stronger and stronger. And if you're really having trouble, everything feels right mechanically, your setup looks good, but you just can't feel your glutes, you can always regress this down to the floor and start without the bench, without the barbell, and just do a floor bridge until you feel your glutes, and then go into the more technically difficult version, which would use the barbell and the bench. So I want to give you guys a visual of some of those errors and kind of how to correct them. The first one we'll look at is the shin placement. So pretend I've got the barbell on top, but my shins in this position right here, they're quite a bit out in front of my body. They're not vertical. I'm going to feel more quad from this position because my knees get the opportunity to extend. And we're trying to train hip extension, not knee extension. So if I pull the shins back to a position where they're more vertical, I kind of eliminate my body's ability to use knee extension, and I'm almost exclusively stuck with hip extension. Second thing we want to look at is the position of the pelvic bone, right? If I don't get into full posterior pelvic tilt, I'm missing out on a lot of contraction of the glutes. And because this is such a specific exercise, we want to get the most tangible recruitment of the muscle possible. So upon getting to full hip extension, I like to pair that with some posterior pelvic tilt. The last thing is the position of the spine. If your head is back, you're going to notice you get a lot of stress on the lumbar spine. So if you're experiencing lower back pain, you gotta tuck the chin and go through the range of motion, keeping the spine a little bit more in check, not just letting it kind of fly back like that. If you get all those points down, you'll be totally fine and you'll feel it in your glutes right away. You'll know you guys are doing this right if you really feel your glutes firing at the fully extended or top position. If you have some problems with the lower back, maybe the neck, the quads are lighting up, refer back to those tips I mentioned earlier and you should be able to troubleshoot them easy. Sets, reps, weight, tempo, it's going to be dependent on your goals, right? So a few different ways to approach it. If you're looking at gaining strength, this is an exercise that you can do at a lower rep range for heavier loads. Remember, you might need a pad for that just because of the abrasion on the hip. But if you're really trying to grow your glutes and develop them, a variety of rep ranges works great. You can do heavy to build strength, moderate repetition ranges or even higher repetition ranges work really well for adding some volume, getting a nice pump. I do recommend a variety of rep ranges specifically if you're trying to develop your glutes. For things like tempo and breathing, I have a few cues that I recommend, but again, it is going to be unique to you and how you feel throughout the movement. I like to exhale as I come into full hip extension or while I reach the top of the thrust. Kind of like on a squat and a deadlift, you like to exhale from the hole to the top. In terms of tempo, a lot of people forget to squeeze at the top. They kind of rush that isometric hold at the top, right? And you're gonna miss out on a lot of critical muscle contraction that occurs in that state. And if you want to really build your glutes, you wanna overload them when they're most shortened, right? In all range of motion. So if you fully skip that top and you don't really hold the squeeze, you're gonna miss out. So whatever tempo you do, whether you do it slow down or fast down, just make sure you hold the squeeze at the top.
All right, thanks for tuning in, you guys. If you guys liked that video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Also, if you have any questions regarding this video, just leave them in the comments below. We'll be coming back periodically and answering those for you.